What is up, my dashing dudes and darling dames? I am the Hans TV, and welcome back to the subreddit that allows you to get professional revenge. It's r/ProRevenge. Our first post for the day comes from Fallout Fan 1987. Take the money I give for bills and squander it. Hope you like the court system. The background. I lived with a group of people who I thought were my friends. They were two couples, and we all lived in the same house for almost 2 years until I recently moved out. There was David and Tina, and Brittany and AJ. I was the only single person there. There was a debate on how we should pay the bills, but we all decided to give the money to the person whose name was on the bill. David paid the mortgage, Tina paid the water and electric/gas, and I paid the internet. It came to the point where I was paying close to 80% of the mortgage by myself, the entire water bill, about 75% of the gas and electric, and I was still paying the internet by myself. I was giving the money still to the person in charge of the bill, but came to find out, about 10 days before I moved out, that the mortgage was defaulted on and the house was in foreclosure. Also, the water, gas, and electric bills were in constant threat of being shut off, and that the only up-to-date bill was the internet. While they all saw me struggle to pay these off, they were mindlessly spending money during the day, which is when I sleep due to working third shift. So I never saw the mindless things they spent money on, nor did I ever see the mail, since they grabbed it before I woke up. Brittany never paid anything as she was having her check garnished due to unpaid student loans. But she always had expensive makeup. AJ never held a job for more than 2 weeks. David and Tina were always calling into work, knowing that I wouldn't allow them to go without a home due to our history. So, one day I woke up while they were all out and about doing something or the other. So I went to check the mail as I was expecting a package. When I saw the bills in the mail, I decided to investigate. I opened up the gas and electric bill, as they are by the same company, to see a total amount of almost $400 and in risk of being shut off. I was shocked and pissed. I knew right then and there what was going on, and I vowed to screw them over as hard as I could. The revenge. I had just interviewed for a new job that paid almost double what I was making, and I knew that I interviewed well with them. So I told myself that if I got the job, I would give them a 30-day notice and move out. And as it was close to the end of the month and I already paid them, I'd be moving out before the 1st of February. I got the call with the job offer the next day, which I happily accepted. I did the paperwork for the background check and it all came back clean. The same day I accepted the offer, I typed out a 30-day notice and recorded myself, with my phone in my breast pocket, handing it to them, explaining that I was moving out. I started my job and my hunt for an apartment close to my new job, which I found within a week of starting. I took almost the entirety of my checks, set them aside for rent, deposit, and basic things that I would need. I was asked several times to help with the next month's bills, to which I said no, as I was saving for my own place and that they had plenty of time to come put the money between the four of them. Because I was doing it all by myself pretty much, on a meager pay rate of $11 an hour before my new job. There were a lot of scowls, passive-aggressive behavior, and flat-out attempts to take or use my things or food without my permission. The day came when I finally went and got my U-Haul, and had a few friends help me move. Free beer and free lunch are the best payment ever, as they all shared it with me. I was determined to get it all in one go, so I got the biggest one they had, and we got everything packed up. I took everything that was mine down to my pizza stone, which they loved, my expensive kitchen knives, which they would use and never clean, even my toilet paper that I had bought 3 days prior because I needed it. A few rolls went missing very quickly. After moving everything in, I sat down on my couch, looked around, my cat in my lap, and breathed a sigh of relief. I happened to be very good friends with my previous neighbors. We smoked each other out frequently, and I asked them to keep an eye out for anything out of the ordinary. 4 days go by, and I come to find out that the gas, electric, and water have all been turned off, and they were asking to fill up some buckets to manually flush the toilets, bathe in, etc., etc. Now, both couples have dogs, which my cat hated as they were both hyperactive as hell, but I loved them. So I decided that those dogs were in a dangerous situation as they had no water, no heat in the middle of winter, and probably no food as I had bought the last bag about 2 weeks prior. I hate to see an animal hungry. So I called the local humane society and left an anonymous tip about the dogs and how I was worried about them. The next day, my neighbor Todd texted me telling that the dogs were removed from the home, that my previous housemates were being charged with neglect, and because of the lack of utilities, that these were not civil but criminal charges. This was enough for me to smile, but I wanted more. I knew that David was divorced and had a child. I also knew that he wasn't paying child support. I then contacted the local courts and made them aware of the flagrant non-support, and that maybe they could help the agency looking for him. I provided the address that we lived out, and that the homeowner was the one that was being looked for. From there, it came to light that he was almost $25,000 behind, which is a felony in the state where I live. He is now living with someone on their couch, as Tina left him. The house has been foreclosed upon, and he has nothing to his name while facing multiple criminal charges. Moral of the story: don't take advantage of a friend who knows all your dirty secrets. Another moral of this story: if you're living in a house with people, pay your part of the bills. Don't try and force it on one other person, because that's a dick move, and you will get screwed because of it. Our next post comes from Sion GMI26. Falsely accuse me and withhold my pay? Say goodbye to your business. So this happened a little bit ago at my first job. I worked at a small local spa company. There were only about 6 workers there. I worked there for a year and a half and only met the owner once, but talked to them on the phone a lot. She was batty, but that's beside the point. Anyway, I got hired because of my friend's mom, Pam, was the manager, and someone had quit in the middle of their shift, so they needed someone fast. I worked really well there and learned very fast. I was very good at the job, to the point where after a couple of months, they sent new hires to be trained by me. Turnover here was bad. Despite this, I didn't get a raise or anything. It wasn't a big deal, but it would have been nice. Anyway, I was always a closer. There would be a list of things I had to do after we closed, like vacuum and dust and such, janitorial things. As months go by, Pam begins to pick apart things. A string was left on the rug. The candy bowls weren't filled, even though they weren't even half gone, etc. Nothing too big, but they made it seem like I liked their mother. Slowly, things started to get worse. Eventually, I was being told that I was not cleaning rooms that I know for a fact I had. Now, I admit that once in a while, I would forget to clean something, but I was getting yelled at for things I knew for a fact I had cleaned. My other problem was that when my coworkers would forget the exact same things, she wouldn't yell at them, but would just say, "Try to remember," or something along those lines. Eventually, Pam got other coworkers to lie so that she could report me to the owner. Many days I came right from school and would be wearing jeans. Pam left right when I got there, so after I clocked in and counted the drawer, I would go and change into my work pants. Well, it turns out other coworkers would lie and tell her I never changed. After this, I began taking pictures and time-stamping them. This worked for a little while, but then my coworkers would say I changed back into jeans after that picture. And when it came to cleaning, she would say I didn't clean it well enough, etc. All of these would get turned into the owner, but she wouldn't fire me because they were so desperate for people and no one wanted to work there. I wonder why. Eventually, I quit because I had a job for the summer that gave me many more hours. In my summer job, I made the same amount of money in 7 weeks that I made in a year at the last place. Right after I left, I learned why Pam wanted me gone so bad. Pam had hired her son, my ex-friend, because he was too lazy to work a job where he couldn't sit around all day. That made me mad. But even worse was they wouldn't give me my last payment. We were paid in cash. I sent multiple emails and text messages to Pam and the owner that reminded them that I needed it. When those went unanswered, I then threatened legal action. Being a high schooler, I don't believe they thought I would do anything. How wrong they were. Well, there were many reasons I was mad about this, and so I decided I'd document every single thing about it that place. These included 8+ hour workday with no breaks or a lunch, both of which are required in my state, rats in the basement, an ant infestation, fake security cameras. They allowed underage drinking, Pam thinking the amount of money we had to pay her son and daughter for under-the-table work, child labor. Pam's daughter was not old enough to work, not fixing things like building framework, mold, etc., allowing temperatures to go above and below the legal limit. On bad days, it was above 100 or below 50 inside. Drug use. Pam giving herself a raise, even though they had already made more than everyone else there. Selling client information. Pam compiling clients for another worker to take with them to a new company. Usually not illegal, but the way they went about it was. I don't remember the exact details. Not doing anything about harassment. Not paying workers. There'd be days where we didn't have enough money in the drawer and the owner and or Pam would be too lazy to go to the bank, so they would just straight up not pay us. Not only this, but prior to me leaving, I recorded some of the verbal abuse from Pam. Believe it or not, I even got them to admit to making false write-ups on me. There was more, but I can't remember what else right now. Anyway, I compiled all of this and sent it in an email to OSHA. Things went down. In the end, both Pam and the owner were served with some hefty fines, and Pam is even facing time right now for fraud. The owner had to shut down their business and sell it. I don't know if the owner is facing any jail time. I also emailed every spa within 50 miles so the owner, Pam, and some coworkers have been blacklisted from working within an hour of where we're located. I never did receive my last payment. It wasn't worth going to court over, but what came out of it was so much better. What was the thought process of Pam whenever she was running this store? Hey, let's commit every felony known to man. I'm sure no one will ever tell on me. I don't know why I did a Mickey voice, but it worked. Our final post for the day comes from Mr. 010. Fire me before I quit? I'll ruin your life. Since I'm in school, I took a job at a bakery of types which I won't name. The place has bread in the name, but also sells overpriced salads and sandwiches. I worked there for close to a year when I had this boss named Betty. Not her real name, of course. Betty and I didn't get along whatsoever. She had gotten the previous general manager to quit because she had an affair with him, and she threatened to tell his wife if he didn't leave. He quickly left the job, and she was promoted to the position. I didn't like her, but I have to respect the dedication to be general manager of a small-ass store. When I first started working there, I was respectful, but she would do things that would get on my nerves. For instance, I would clean all the places I would be hired to do, and once I was done, I relaxed for maybe 5 minutes. She would run out of the manager's office screeching, "Why aren't you working?" I would tell her, of course, that I did my job as a cashier, and if nobody was there to help, then I didn't have anything to do. She would glare at me, then I would see her accidentally drop an entire pot of brewed coffee onto my freshly mopped floor for me to clean. So I learned quickly to always look busy. Once she realized I was going to kneel and kiss the ground she walked on, she started dropping my hours. The store ran a Game of Thrones type politics for who got promotions and raises. Somehow, all of her friends were managers and would bully the rest of us. She was barely at work. She would drive to my job, clock in, just in case corporate decided to check her hours. So she was essentially stealing hours. When you clocked in, it printed out a small piece of paper telling you when you clocked in. She would just drop them on the floor for me to clean up. I would usually pick them up and stick them into a pocket. So this led me to finding Betty clock in and out stubs in my pocket at my house. This will be important for later. Did I mention that she was super racist? She was white and most of the staff were my fellow high school peers, were mostly all POC. One day at work, she walked out and told us, "When you're on the clock, I own you." When we all reacted to look at her, she backpedaled and was like, "I didn't mean it like that." This will be important for later. So after a while, I got sick of practically begging for hours, so I went to my current job, but decided I merely wanted to drop my hours, which were already barely a day a week. But suddenly when I got my new job, she scheduled me every single day of an entire week. She never did that, even when we were on semi-good terms. So I obviously told her I had a new job and couldn't do this. After that, I went home and called my friend who was still working there to tell him I was going to quit tomorrow. He has a bad habit of putting his phone on speaker when he's cleaning at work. So Betty obviously overheard this. The next day, I walk in and go through the respectful motion of saying, "Thank you for the opportunity," and blah blah blah. Betty let me get through the entire speech before she said, "Oh yeah, I was meaning to tell you, you're fired." I was so blindsided and pissed, I cussed her out. My mom raised me to treat women with respect, but this fat overweight hippo looking bitch pissed me the off. She's the type of girl to think binge eating was a personality trait. So I left and was mad about being fired before I could quit, but didn't push the issue. I'm only 18 and I already had another job. I wasn't expecting Betty to give me a good reference anyway. I would have completely left it alone if it wasn't for the district manager Ben, not real name, texting me. The revenge. He thought I was still working there, so I explained to him I was fired. He was stunned due to the fact that I was a decent employee. He asked me why she let me go and I explained it to him and he was angry. He clarified that she fired me before I quit and I said yes. He was pissed that she did this and asked if there was anything else she might have done. I kind of just vented to him for a bit. When I told him about the racist remark, he asked if anyone else would collaborate with me. I forgot to mention that she slowly fired and forced people to quit and replaced them with her friends and family, which according to company policy, she couldn't do. Something about conflict of interest. So I asked all the people who were working there that day if they could, and a few said that they would say she did. But one did even better. My one coworker, Andy, is convinced that he's the next big vlogger. So he always has his phone out or just using audio recording for hours for a chance to catch a funny clip. I've watched his content and let me say, it's just super cringe. But turns out he labels each recording by the day and times. So when he checked, he found her making the racist remarks. I got a brilliant idea, and with my other fired or coworkers forced to quit, we decided to scour Andy's recordings. We found some great moments of Betty saying controversial things or just being nasty. Like once, a guest sneezed on the baked pastries, and when a coworker told her, she laughed it off and said nobody would know. But this wasn't enough for me. I try to avoid conflict, but when I'm in a situation, I'll follow it through. I looked her up on Facebook and found out she was married. Nobody knew this. So when she had the affair with the other manager and basically blackmailed him, she was also married and cheating. I don't think anyone ever cared enough to find out because she was a nasty old lady. So I found the old manager, Mark's Facebook, and found out he and his wife were separated. Turns out even after he quit, Betty was still trying to blackmail money out of him. When he didn't, she told his wife anyway, causing his wife to divorce him and basically leave him to go back to live with his parents. I did some research, and in my state, blackmail or extortion is a third-degree penalty, which has a max of 7 years in prison with a fine over $10,000 to the victim. So I told the old manager what my plan was for her. He agreed to call the cops on her, but I asked if he'd wait until I finished my part first. He said he'd give me a week. So I met with District Manager Ben and showed him all our evidence, the recordings and the written statements from my other ex-coworkers and people who were still working there. I also gave Ben the slips of paper when Betty clocked in and then left and returned 8 to 10 hours later to clock out. Ben thanked me for the information and then I left. A few days later, while walking past the store, I noticed it was closed in the middle of the day. I texted a guy who still worked there and he told me everything. Turns out, Ben first checked the security cameras to see if she was there for the full time she claimed to be. Big surprise, she wasn't. So Ben decided to investigate the store's expenses, since if she's lying about her time, what else could she be stealing? He found out she was stealing money from the store. The guy didn't fully explain how she was, but just that she was. Turns out she was breaking a lot of health and safety codes and used the money for repairs and etc. for herself. So she was fired immediately, along with all of her minions, and that left barely anybody to run the store. They shut down to clean up the store and fix things she didn't make. She's out of a job, and Mark told her husband with photo proof, granny nudes, I know, ew, that she cheated on him. But Mark phrased it so it seemed like she still was. So Betty's husband flips out and decides to divorce her. And Betty is the type to post everything on Facebook. So she's begging someone to let her stay, but all of her friends and family totally bailed on her. So she was living in her car looking for a job. That's when Mark decided to sue her for extortion. So she scrambles to find a lawyer, and to make it even worse, the company decided to sue her for all the money she stole, and plus all the repairs and lost revenue while the store is closed. Betty's life is shit. She had to sell her car for drastically under what it's worth to pay for all the legal trouble. Mark told me bits and pieces of her crying in the courtroom, but not too much. I was never super close with him. Last I heard of Betty, she was living with her sister who definitely hates her. To think she would have avoided this if she just let me quit. Wow, that's just... Wow, OP. I'm lost for words, man. That is amazing. Like, if I could get revenge on somebody that hard, I don't know what I'd do, man. That is awesome. Well, alright, my dashing dudes and darling dames, that is going to do it for today's episode of r/ProRevenge. I hope you liked the stories, and if you did, I'm going to link them down in the description as always. And if you liked the video, subscribe, share, drop a like, and a comment down below what you'd like to see me read next. A humongous thank you to everyone who has subscribed and is supporting the channel. I can't thank y'all enough for what y'all do for me and what y'all do for this community. I can't wait to see how it grows and where we go in this next year. But with that being said, I will see you in the next video.